Good morning. We're on Kuf Omid Beis 100b. We are 3 lines from the bottom of the page, the last word on the line. Oisam. So we're beginning the section of the Gemara over the next 6 pages or so. It's going to discuss the laws of Kiddush. We got into this because we're discussing the question of eating on Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov. And we were introduced to this unique halacha that if one begins to eat when one is allowed to on Erev Shabbos or Yom Tov, either according to Rabbi Huda or Rabbi Yossi, and in the middle of his meal, Kiddush of Ahavas, the day becomes holy, and Shabbos starts, the sun sets. So Poides Mapo Makadosh, he covers the bread and makes Kiddush. This was the halacha that we learned in connection with this discussion about whether we start our meal or stop our meal on Erev Shabbos and Yom Tov. So that takes us into the laws of Kiddush over the next 6 or so pages. So that was halacha number 1 we learned. Or actually, really 2 halachas we learned about Kiddush. One is that while you're making Kiddush in the presence of bread, the bread's supposed to be covered. That's halacha 1 we learned. And halacha 2 we learned now is that if your meal started earlier and Shabbos becomes the middle, you cover the bread and make Kiddush without breaking your meal per se. So you don't have to bench, you just go on to making Kiddush in the middle of the meal. And we'll discuss more of that later, and then again in the Shulchan Aruch. Now from there, we get into other discussions about Kiddush. And specifically today, we're going to look at 2. And when we're done with both of those 2, we're going to look at the Shulchan Aruch. One is in Siman Reish Samach Tes, which is the halacha around making Kiddush in Shul on Friday night, even though no one is eating there, or may not be anybody eating there, as we'll learn. And the other is the din that Ein Kiddush b'makom suda, that's the Kiddush must be, Ein Kiddush el b'makom suda, the Kiddush must be in the place where you're going to eat. Because the Kiddush has to be associated with your meal that you're eating, and thus should be in that place. That's in Siman Reish Ayin Gimel, which we'll look at as well. And then we'll keep on going through the Gemara, which tells us more details of the laws of Kiddush. And at the end, we'll go to Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, 271, that discusses the laws of Kiddush. So let's begin then. Oisam b'nei Adam, those people, shekitchu b'beis hakneses, which make the Kiddush in the Beis HaKnesses, in the shul, Friday night, as Shabbos starts. And you'll already notice an interesting language. The Gemara does not say, I'm looking for the Rashbam and the Rashi yet. The Gemara does not say, we're obligated to make Kiddush in shul. That's not how the Gemara phrases it. The Gemara says, Oisam, those people, should kitchu b'beis hakneses to make Kiddush in shul. And the Gemara is about to discuss the laws regarding that, or what the consequences of that are. But that's the phraseology itself is interesting. Not what is obligated to make Kiddush in shul, but those who do, as if to say seemed like it was a custom that some shuls did do it and some shuls did not do it, which is still the reality today. Some shuls do it and some don't. Okay, so those who do it, they make Kiddush in shul. Amar Rav says, Yedei Yayin lo yotzim. They have not fulfilled their obligation of the bracha over wine, right? Our Kiddush has 3 parts to it. It has the introductory paragraph, which is Yom HaShishi, lifted from the Chumash, describing the 7th day of creation, the first Shabbos, called Shabbos Bereshis, the Shabbos of creation. That's the introduction. Then we have section 2 is the bracha hagafen, over the cup of wine. And then we have the bracha of Kiddush itself, the last bracha. Sorry? I'm talking about the Kiddush itself. The Kiddush itself has these 3 sections, right? So, okay, the Yom HaShishi, that's a quoting from Psukkim. A person can really do that whenever he wants. He can quote Psukkim, and right? It's a good thing to learn Torah. Now we're saying it now in association with declaring Shabbos holy. The second bracha is a bracha over drinking wine, as one does whenever one drinks wine. And the third bracha is a bracha of Kiddush, which is the bracha of, in many ways, it's a bracha over mitzvah. Before you do any mitzvah, we make a bracha, thanking Hashem for the mitzvah. Right? We thank Hashem for everything. So you're about to drink wine, you thank Hashem for the wine. You're about to observe a mitzvah, thank Hashem for the mitzvah. We do this every time. When it comes to Kiddush, there's an added element, as we're going to learn soon, that the Torah says to remember Shabbos, Zachar, which also implies to mention, to make mention of. Right? The same way we have Zachar, remember what Amalek did, isn't just a commandment of the mind to cognitively remember, but it's a commandment of speech, mention. The word Zachar could be to mention or to remember. Right? So likewise here, we have to remember, we have to mention Kiddush, Shabbos. So in addition to the ordinary fact that this is ordinary, in addition to the regular process of making the bracha, thanking Hashem for the mitzvah, and as we're about to observe Shabbos, we thank Hashem for the mitzvah of Shabbos, there's an added element, which we'll learn soon, whether it's biblical or rabbinic, we'll get to that. But there's an element of the Torah itself commands to make mention of Shabbos. That's what we're doing. So now when you're making Kiddush and Shul, we haven't yet described what the objective is. Who is it for? Why are we making Kiddush and Shul? But before that, we have a dispute as to the fact, which is which obligation did this person fulfill? The one who led that Kiddush, the Gabbay, who made Kiddush for everybody. So says Rav, the bracha over wine he hasn't fulfilled, in the sense that if he goes home and wants to drink wine, he has to make another bracha agafen, because he made a bracha in Shul over the wine that he's holding in his hand, and then he gets home, the bracha he made on the wine in Shul will not cover the wine he's going to drink at home. So if he wants to drink wine at home, he has to make a new bracha. This is Rav's opinion. He has not fulfilled the obligation for the bracha over wine. If he wants to drink again at home, he has to make another bracha because he went to a new location. And because he went to a new location, the bracha he made over the food in the old location does not transfer to the bracha, to the drink he's about to consume in location 2, his shul, to his home. But you did Kiddush Yatsu. But he did fulfill his obligation to sanctify the day, the second bracha, Kiddush. And therefore, when he comes home, he's exempt from making Kiddush. He has to make a bracha agafen if he wants to drink a cup of wine, but he's exempt from making Kiddush because he already made that Kiddush in shul. This is Rav's view. With Shmuel Omar, and Shmuel says, now top of Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph 101a, after Yidei Kiddush Lo Yatsu. He hasn't even fulfilled his obligation to make Kiddush. And when he gets home, he's required to make Kiddush again. Okay, so in Rav's view, it's a little bit more understood. Why? Well, the bracha over wine is a question of enjoying a glass of wine. And the glass of wine I enjoy in one place is one drinking, that's in the shul. And the glass of wine I drink at home is a second location, a second drinking, a second enjoyment to make another bracha. But Kiddush, sanctifying the day, I already sanctified the day. Right? One cannot make a bracha twice on the same mitzvah.
The mitzvah is in your house.
The mitzvah is the mitzvah of Shabbos, which he already began to observe earlier, and he made a bracha on Shabbos. It's over. That's right. So he already fulfilled his obligation to demonstrate his thanks for Shabbos observance because he made Kiddush already. And if when he comes home, there's no reason to make Kiddush again. We'll see in a moment. Maybe he does, but he's not obligated in the Kiddush. But Shmuel's a little bit less understood. Because in his view, none of the brachas did you fulfill. Wine doesn't exempt you from drinking wine at home because you went to a new location. So you have to make a bracha again if you want to consume more wine. But Shmuel says now even Kiddush you didn't fulfill. So did I waste the bracha in Shul? I made a bracha on Shabbos. And now you're telling me, Shmuel, that I have to make another bracha on Shabbos when I get home? So what was the point of the first bracha? So this is what the Gemara is going to address. But first, the Gemara clarifies Rav, as we just explained it, and then Shmuel. Rav, so in Rav's view, right, let's get the timeline, it helps us understand. Rav and Shmuel are the second generation of sages of the Gemara. The first generation being Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shub Levi, Reish Lakish, Rabba also. It's the first generation of the post-Mishnaic, the Gemara's era, and Rav and Shmuel is the next generation. So we have their conversation where Rav says the mitzvah of wine doesn't transfer to your home, and Shmuel says even Kiddush doesn't transfer. You have to make Kiddush again. That's all we have. So we now, the redactors of the Gemara, a couple of decades, maybe even century later, are now analyzing that conversation. So says the Gemara. See, the Gemara runs on as if it's like all one narrative, but it's not. It's a conglomerate of conversations that take place over centuries. So now the Gemara is analyzing this conversation that they know Rav and Shmuel had maybe centuries or decades earlier. And they say like this: Rav, in Rav's view, which said that you fulfilled your obligation to make Kiddush, it's only the wine that doesn't transfer. The bracha over wine doesn't transfer from shul to home. So why should he make Kiddush again in his home? Says the Gemara, you really don't. You made Kiddush already. So why would you repeat it? So his children and household members, his wife, his kids, they'll fulfill the bracha of Kiddush. So if he's the Gabbay in shul, and he made Kiddush in shul, I can even go a step further. I'm not the Gabbay in shul, but I heard the bracha from the Gabbay, and I said Amen. In so doing, I also fulfill my obligation. So why am I making Kiddush again at home? Because I have a family, and they need to hear Kiddush. So the bracha I'm making at home is actually not a bracha to fulfill my own obligation, but to fulfill someone else's obligation, which is in and of itself a unique law. Because what am I learning here? I'm learning that even if I fulfill my obligation for a bracha, I can make it again to help someone else fulfill his obligation. This is a Kiddush. This is a novelty. And in halacha, this is not such a simple statement. Right? If I put on tefillin already, can I then go and make a bracha al laniach tefillin for you, and you should put on tefillin? That's essentially what's happening here. I already fulfilled my obligation for Kiddush, but I'm making Kiddush again for the sake of my family. That's a Kiddush, and I can do that. But Rav says you can. Even though your obligation is exempt, you're done, you don't need to make Kiddush anymore. But I can make Kiddush again for my family. So this is the Kiddush on Rav's side. Now Shmuel, the Kiddush is the other way. In Shmuel's view, I did not fulfill my obligation of Kiddush in shul. So I certainly have to do it again, not to help my family fulfill their obligation, but for myself, I need to fulfill Kiddush because I haven't fulfilled the Kiddush of shul. Well, the question then becomes, why am I making Kiddush in shul at all? Why am I making Kiddush in shul at all if I haven't fulfilled my obligation? And Shmuel says, why should I make Kiddush in shul if in Shmuel's view nobody fulfilled their obligation, or at least I didn't fulfill my obligation of Kiddush? Why? Because as we're going to learn, this other halacha we mentioned earlier, ein Kiddush ela b'makom suda. Kiddush has to be made in the place where I eat my meal. Taisus explains for us, because the pasuk says, the karasa l'Shabbos oneg, you shall call out Shabbos a delight. Karasa l'Shabbos oneg. The simple reading of the pasuk is, you should refer to Shabbos as a delight. You shall treat it as a delight. But the word v'karasa, you shall treat it, or you should call out, describes like calling out. So when do I call out Shabbos? In my Kiddush. And the Torah says, you shall call out Shabbos as a delight. As if to say, when you do your calling out of Shabbos, do it next to your delight. The delight being your meal. So the karasa, your calling out of Shabbos, should be next to your oneg, next to your meal. So Tosfos tells us. So we have this halach that you have to make Kiddush in the place where you eat. If that's the case, I'm not eating in shul, I'm eating at home. So certainly I cannot fulfill my obligation of Kiddush in shul, because I'm eating at home. If so, why should I make Kiddush at all in shul? Says Shmuel, La fuke archim yedei chevasan. They make Kiddush in shul so that the guests can fulfill their obligation. Guests who come to town would stay in shul. They would eat in shul. They would sleep in shul. There's a hospitality. Remember, shuls, we use the word shul and we associate it with davening. But really, the word in Hebrew, basic knesses, or we're learning here in Aramaic, beit knishta, the word knesses means just gathering. It's a place of gathering. It isn't necessarily exclusively for prayer. And really, in modern terms, you would refer to a base Knesset as a community center. Everything was in that building. You had the rabbi's offices in the building, the court, the Bezdin was in that building, the shul was in that building, the school, usually the kids would gather together to learn in that same building. Some of these buildings even had jails, because it was the one community building, and if the Bezdin decided that a certain person needed to be locked up for a little while, for whatever reason, he'd be where they lock up and buy another property, the same property, they put them in shul, the basement. You can still go to some old shuls in Europe and find the old Jewish jails in the basement. They were not government jails. They were jails built by the Bezdin to, right? So it was one community center, and in that community center, they also had hospitality suites. So if a Jew was coming to town, he would stay in shul. So for that person, so he was eating in shul, sleeping in shul. So he would have to hear Kiddush. So instead of, I guess, buying wine for all of them, they should all drink wine. One guy drinks wine, one guy makes Kiddush, and he fulfills the obligation of all the guests. Okay. So let's understand now. So this is the end of the discussion on understanding Rav and Shmuel in relation to the Kiddush in shul, and we'll discuss a little bit about that. And tomorrow we're going to look at the Siman Reish Samach Tes, chapter 269 in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, which discusses this unique halacha of making Kiddush in shul with all the details and so on. And then tomorrow, and then after that, we'll go further in the Gemara, which discusses the law of in Kiddush el b'makom suda, that one has to make Kiddush in the place where he eats, which is a spin-off of this discussion. Because as we're going to learn, the reason why Shmuel says you don't fulfill your obligation for Kiddush while listening to it in shul is because you have to make Kiddush in the place where you're going to eat, and you're not eating in shul. Okay, so let's recap the different views of Rav and Shmuel, and we're going to learn that the halacha is actually a hybrid of the two. There's a few halachas that emerge from this discussion. Halacha number one is, everybody agrees, both Rav and Shmuel, that when you make a bracha over food in one place, and then you move to another place, in the new place you get to make another bracha. This emerges from the fact that they both agree that even if you were the guy who made Kiddush in shul, you still have to make another bracha hagafen when you get home, should you want to drink more wine. Right? So that's halacha number one that emerges. That's not directly related to our discussion. This discussion of akiras, a person moving from one place to another, and therefore required to make a new bracha, the primary place in the Gemara where that's discussed is in the Masechta Brachas, obviously. And there's a Kufayin Ches, Kufayin Tes, other simonim in the Shulchan Aruch that deal with that. Section 178, 179, that deals with those laws. That's law number one that emerges from this discussion. Now, the dispute between Rav and Shmuel really is whether you fulfilled your obligation for Kiddush by listening to the Kiddush in shul. In Rav's view, you do. Just by listening to Kiddush in shul and answering Amen, you fulfilled your obligation. Which means in Rav's view, you don't have to have Kiddush in the place you're going to eat. Because I'm going to be eating at home, but I fulfilled my obligation for Kiddush by listening to Kiddush in shul. Why would I repeat the Kiddush later? For my family's sake, which is another law we derive from Rav. Law number one is I don't have to make Kiddush in the place where I eat. I can make Kiddush in shul and eat at home. Law number two is even once I fulfilled my obligation, I can repeat the bracha again with Hashem's name for the sake of someone else. That's law number two that emerges from Rav. Now, in Rav's view, which the Gemara doesn't discuss directly, if everybody's repeating Kiddush again when they get home, if everybody fulfilled their obligation in shul, but they're repeating it again at home anyway to fulfill the obligation for their families, so why make Kiddush in shul if you're anyway repeating it for your family? So why not just fulfill your obligation by your own Kiddush you're doing for your family? Why hear it in shul, fulfill your obligation, and then go home and do it again in this convoluted way where I'm not doing it for myself, I'm doing it for my family? Why hear it in shul to begin with? The Gemara doesn't address that, and Tosfos does, and explains that the reason is to save all the single men on needing to buy a cup of wine. Right? Because the only reason to, in Rav's view, the only reason to repeat Kiddush when you get home is for your family to fulfill their obligation. But if you have no family, you don't have to. So by the shul sponsoring one cup of wine for the leader, anyone in the room who has no family is now exempt from Kiddush, and you save them the cost, the expense of buying a glass of wine. So that's Rav's view. The halacha does not follow Rav, at least insofar as the idea that you can fulfill your obligation for Kiddush in the place where you're not eating. We rule that the halacha is like Shmuel, that you have to make Kiddush in the place where you're eating, as we're going to learn. That's law number one that comes from Shmuel, that you have to make Kiddush in the place you eat, which is why, unless you are a guest in town that's listening to the Kiddush in Shul, you don't fulfill your obligation by the Kiddush made in Shul. If you're local, you don't fulfill your obligation for the Kiddush in Shul. Only if you're a guest in town. Which means two things. Number one, all the listeners who are going home to make Kiddush themselves, because they have to make, in Shmuel's view, they have to make Kiddush in the place they're going to eat. They for sure didn't fulfill their obligation from the Kiddush that they listened to.
They did not.
They did not, in Shmuel's view, because they have to make Kiddush in the place they're going to eat, which is home. What about the guy who's the chazan, the Gabbay? He's actually making Kiddush. Did he fulfill his obligation by the Kiddush in Shul? In Shmuel's view, no, because you have to make Kiddush in the place you're eating. And even the Gabbay is going to go home and eat, presumably. So if that's the case, that means he agrees with Rav that you can make Kiddush for someone else, not for yourself. The Gabbay. The Gabbay is making Kiddush for everybody else, for the guests, but not for himself. Perhaps. I'm saying perhaps, because it's quite possible, as it was in the old day, that the Chazan, the Gabbay, actually lived in the Shul. We'll discuss that perhaps a little bit when we get to the Shulchan Aruch. But perhaps we still get this notion that the Gabbay was making Kiddush, and presumably he's going home, is making Kiddush for someone else, not for himself. Which is again a Kiddush, which means he would make Kiddush twice, once for the guests in Shul, and then another time when he gets home for himself and his family, where he's actually eating. This is halacha number 2 that comes from Rav. Right? Halacha number 1 is you have to make Kiddush in the place you eat. Halacha number 2 is that the Gabbay can make Kiddush twice, once for everybody, once for the guest, and one for himself when he gets home. Halacha number 3 is, and this is the most amazing feature, what about when there's no guest in town? Should the Gabbay still be making Kiddush?
In fact, he's doing it. Children.
But there's no guest in town. In Shmuel's view, he has to make Kiddush again anyway for his family. And he has to make Kiddush again at home in the place where he's going to eat. So, if there's no guest in town, should he be making Kiddush? You would imagine not. In Rav's view, where you can fulfill your obligation of Kiddush even not in the place you eat, so he makes Kiddush in Shul. He fulfills his own obligation, certainly. And anyone else who is single and doesn't have any family and are not making Kiddush again for the family, they also fulfill their obligation. Okay, so in Rav's view, at no point was his Kiddush for nobody's benefit. But in Shmuel's view, where you have to make Kiddush in the place you're eating, which means only the guests who are listening to this Kiddush fulfill their obligation because they're eating in Shul, it means if there's no guest in town, who is the Kiddush for? Presumably for no one. And you would conclude, therefore, you would think that if that's the case, no guest in town, don't make Kiddush in Shul. Or, to put it in modern terms, today's day and age, where even guests do not eat in Shul Friday night, they go to their homes, they go to their hosts, they go to their hotels, wherever they're staying. It's not as if there's hospitality suites in Shuls nowadays with provided Friday night meals. It's not the case. So should they be making Kiddush in Shul today? We see in reality communities are. And it's not because we follow Rav, which says you don't have to make Kiddush in your place. We follow Shmuel that you have to make Kiddush in the place you eat. And yet they're still making Kiddush in Shul, even though there's no guest. So what are they doing it for? This is a really, really good question. And the Shulchan Aruch is going to address that. But what's clear from the Gemara is that this Kiddush happened always, even if there's no guest in town. How do we know this? Because Rav and Shmuel are not discussing what you should do in shul. How did the discussion begin? The discussion began, those who made Kiddush in shul, which of the two brachas did they fulfill their obligation? They didn't fulfill it in wine because they have to make another bracha wine if they want to later. But Shmuel says they didn't even fulfill Kiddush, and Rav said they did fulfill Kiddush. They're discussing post factum of what the custom is. Now, if the custom was that you only make Kiddush when you have guests, then you wouldn't have a dispute between Rav and Shmuel. It's very clear. You only make Kiddush when you have guests. They're discussing a fact. There are shuls that make Kiddush every Friday night. What are they doing it for? Rav says for the single people who don't have families and they fulfill their obligation, and Shmuel says for the guest. And if there's no guest in town, you still make Kiddush Friday night. Which means in Shmuel's view, even though you're only making Kiddush for the guest, you don't want to do it like, are there guests there? Okay, let's make Kiddush. Not nice. It's part of the program. We always make Kiddush, even when there's no guest. So that when there is guests in town, they fulfill their obligation in Kiddush. This is a big Kiddush. Right? And it's clear from the Gemara of this Kiddush. Again, because as I said, the Gemara does not, it's not as if Rav and Shmuel are arguing, when should you be making Kiddush in Shul? Maybe in Rav's view, only make Kiddush in Shul when there are singles who aren't going home to make Kiddush again for their families. Rav doesn't say that. And the same thing with reverse. Shmuel doesn't say only when you have guests you make Kiddush. They're discussing about shuls that already do it. Well, what is the status of those shuls that do it? Are they doing it for those who are local, don't have to make Kiddush at home? Or are they doing it for the guest? But nowhere in the discussion is, unless the circumstance qualified, don't make Kiddush. So it's clear that this Kiddush happens every Friday night, even when you don't need it. So that when it's needed, it's covered. Which is already a lesson in Ahavas Yisroel. When you want to help someone, don't like look out, oh, you need my help? Okay, let me help you. Now the person feels like he put you out. It's always available. The Kiddush is always available. We're going to make the single people feel bad. And anybody single here who has no family, okay, let's make Kiddush and Shul. That would be nice. Make Kiddush and Shul always. And when someone's there and he needs it, he has it. And the same thing is true with the guest. Look, is there a guest to point him out to make him feel better? There's nowhere to go to eat tonight. Kiddush is available always. The meal is available always in Shul. There's no guest. Fine, there's no guest. So what? But the Kiddush is always there. Which is a little less than Ahavas Yisroel. Okay, so God willing, tomorrow we're going to look at Siman Reish Samachtes, chapter 269 in the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, which is going to give us the laws and all the various different views around the laws of making Kiddush in Shul on Friday night. And as I mentioned, I think it was yesterday or last week, I mentioned that it seems from the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch that we should practice. This should be the practice. And yet, for whatever reason, in Chabad it's not. And I don't necessarily have a good answer for why that's the case. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Oh.